And so he never thought that he would be the one that would have to be making that change. And I said, you know, you'll fit right in. I said, you're fair-skinned, you have blue eyes, you have light brown hair. You'll be a perfect Episcopalian. You'll just be perfect, okay? So we were married at All Saints Church, which is downtown at North Avenue. And Mother had moved her membership from the cathedral down there because that's where she started marriage. And, you know, there wasn't really a lot of pre-counseling like there is today, but I didn't know the priest there, so we wanted to get together with him. And so Stephen had the first interview. And Stephen had played ball in college, and the priest was very athletic, and they just had the best time talking sports. You know how guys do when they get together, and all the details and all the stats that they can talk about. And the subject of his being Jewish never came up. Now, for people who really, they kind of know our story, but they don't, they assume that because Stephen was Jewish and I was Protestant, that I must have encouraged Stephen to become a Christian. But no, that you will have to read the book because that is not the way it was. Believe me, I fought the very idea of the relationship of God with everything that I could muster. But God had different plans for our lives. We were married 8 years before this darling young man came along, and we wanted everything to be perfect. Perfect finances, perfect house, perfect pregnancy. We did the right things. We supported the right organizations. We knew the right people. Well, you know, everything was just perfect. Stephen, by this point, had a very successful real estate investment firm, and we were young 30s. We qualified as movers and shakers in the community, and we worked very, very hard to achieve that status and recognition. And let me just say that based on that kind of thinking, we were setting ourselves up for a major fall. As it says in Proverbs 16, pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Now, I don't think that we were haughty in the way that the term might be used today, but we were full of our own self-importance, and we thought that we were in total control of our lives. And you know, from God's perspective, I can see where he would call that attitude haughty. Now I want to talk about worldview. What we believed and why we believed it. And I think I can give some examples of our family upbringing and the exposure that affected us and how we would respond later on. Stephen's father made a great deal of money at one time. They lived on a beautiful estate on Long Island Sound. He was a dress manufacturer with factories in New York and Massachusetts. But his business failed. In about 18 months' time, his dad had had 2 major heart attacks. The economy turned south, and his business partner came in and handled the company poorly, basically ran it into the ground. Stephen's dad, once he recouped and was healthy enough to come back to the business, he borrowed large amounts of money to bring the business back up to where it was, but it never performed like that again, and ultimately he did have to go bankrupt. Stephen's mother became really angry and bitter and resentful. And she would say to Stephen when he was not performing up to her standards that he would be a failure just like his father. If he heard it once, he heard it multiple times during that chaotic period in their lives between the ages of 13 and 18. She taught him that you're only as good as your last test score or your last job. You are what you accomplish. That's who you are. His parents did not teach that you have self-worth and dignity as a human being, and that your life is valuable whether you make big bucks or not. She may not have said it in actual words, but she taught by example that situational ethics were acceptable as long as you don't hurt anybody and nobody else is the wiser. She also made clear that money is your best friend. They had lost their status and their money and their friends, and she equated having money with friends because when they had money, they had lots of friends. And when they lost their money, they lost their friends. So it's easy to understand that kind of thinking when you understand their value system. Now, my mother's perspective was about social position and making a good marriage. How many women, don't raise your hands, but how many women have you heard your mother say something about a good marriage? Yeah, a good marriage can mean lots of different things to lots of different mothers. But social events were very important to my mother, and although her financial status had changed dramatically since she was no longer married, it was very important to her that my sister made her debut, and she did. Mother always pointed out when someone's daughter had made a good marriage. Or she pointed out that Mrs. So-and-so had a good marriage. But that did not mean a loving marriage that was based on fidelity and loyalty. I got the point. Mother was not sold. A good marriage was one that meant the husband must be from a socially acceptable, make that socially prominent family with money. That is an SPFWM, social prominent. Okay, all right, and I can laugh about all that now. Didn't laugh about it then, but I can laugh about it now. About a week or so before our wedding, we received a gift of cash as a wedding present, okay? And Mother suggested to me that we should take that money and buy a silver tea service. Tea service. Stephen and I were thrilled to get the money. We thought, my word, that's going to help pay the rent. I mean, that's what we were going to use the money for. We didn't have a piece of furniture. We had taken a brand new apartment. It was 2285 Peachtree. It was about 12 stories high, and it was brand new, and it was fully furnished. And this was just wonderful for us. And I said, Mother, what in the world would I want a silver tea service for? And Mother said, you can never start too early making good purchases. Now, my mother and Stephen's mother both always said to us, buy good. Wait until you can buy good. We did take that advice, and it was good advice, but Mother's comment at that time was just a bit much. And just before, in the bride's room down at All Saints Church, before the ceremony was to start, Mother took me aside, and I thought, oh, she's going to say something really sweet and wonderful, and it's going to be, like you're leaving single life, and now you're becoming a married woman, and she's going to give me some wonderful advice. And I thought it was just for my ears only. And Mother had a very dramatic voice, and she says, with everyone listening, Elise, you know that by marrying Stephen, you will never be invited into the Atlanta Junior League. There was silence in the room, and Mother kissed me on the cheek, and out she went. Okay, so I can tell you that Stephen and I had lots of things in common. I mean, we really had lots of things in common, but especially the family dynamics of a poor value system. It's true that both of our lives had been uprooted when we were young, mine by my parents' divorce, and his by his father's loss of health and wealth. We were motivated to be successful, to make up for those losses that we had experienced as well as our family had experienced. We needed to be successful. We made sure that my mother and Stephen's mother could not conquer and divide. Mother-in-laws have, not you, not you, but some mothers have that ability to try to move in and conquer and divide and do those kind of things, and Stephen and I were not going to have any part of that. They both tried without success. But in truth, neither mother was happy about the marriage. My mother, because I was marrying someone who was Jewish, who didn't come with family money. Okay? And his mother wasn't happy about the marriage because I wasn't Jewish and I didn't come with family money. So you see the equation there is family money. Okay? And Stephen's mother, well, it just is what it is. So our worldview was materialistic, one that centered on positions, possessions, and power. Stephen and I we were crazy about each other. We had a great relationship. I loved being Mrs. Stephen P. Lawson with president or chairman after my name. I had given up working in the arts as a performer, but I had moved all my energy into the volunteer community. And I was a young star kind of in the volunteer community. I could organize, fundraise, and get great publicity for an organization. And when I was invited into the Atlanta Junior League, of course I called Mother. And Mother said, Elise, now I can die happy. She knew it. And on our 5th wedding anniversary, Stephen gave me a silver tea service. Now this only proves that the apple does not fall too far from the tree. As much as we hated those things that were inculcated into us growing up, we bought into it, all of it. Now, both of our mothers, and I really do want to say, both of our mothers really did have some very fine qualities. And if you had met them, you would find them charming. They both were beautiful women. They were great hostesses. They had wonderful qualities, but neither of them had an eternal value system. A temporal value system is one that is based on what you can see. And an eternal value system, conversely, is based upon or depends upon faith in an unseen God, says Ken Boa in his book, Conform to His Image. Our culture tells us to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. Be all that you can be and make a name for yourself. The world praises celebrity, money, power, and position. The world nods its approval as you make your ascent and make your climb. I love the validation that came from being chairman or president of an organization. You always want more. Well, maybe you all didn't, but I did. I always wanted more. Once you're in that inner circle, you're sure that there's another circle to achieve. It never ends. The inner circle is not good enough, and you want to be in the inner circle. And hopefully, that achievement will fulfill your desires, but of course, it doesn't deliver. I think really many of my friends as young marrieds felt the pressure from their parents to achieve and to live in the right neighborhood and do church work and do volunteer work. And you know, membership in church and volunteer work is not half bad. It's really quite good. But at the time in our life, we didn't give really very much thought to God, and I have learned that it's the motivation of the heart that is of interest to God. And we were strong, and we felt that we didn't need, and I always call it a crutch. That's the way that we felt about religion. It was just a crutch. Now, C.S. Lewis said it best in the Screwtape Letters. He says, prosperity knits a man to the world. He feels that he's finding his place in it, while really it's finding his place in him. His increasing reputation, his widening circle of acquaintances, his sense of importance, that builds up in him a sense of really being at home in earth. But the pursuit of these things, says Ken Boa, leads to emptiness, delusion, and foolishness, and I would say depression. God has set eternity in our hearts, and our deepest desires are fulfilled through love and joy and peace. And our deepest desires are filled by a reality that does not fade away, and by wisdom and the skill of living. Boa continues to say that the only path to this true fulfillment lies in consciously choosing God's value system over that which the world offers. I wish I had read and understood those words earlier in my life, but sadly I doubt that it would have made an impression on either of us at that time. For us to truly see what was important, adversity had to come knocking on our door, and it broke our door down. Stephen was a fabulous salesman and a big picture guy. He probably, on the personality scale, you'd call him a visionary. You'd categorize him as a visionary. He did not enjoy the administrative details in business, and he felt that hiring attorneys in a CPA firm would take care of that aspect of his business. Rather than hiring attorneys with a background in land transactions, private placement offerings, and real estate law, he hired friends. They were attorneys. It's not that they weren't attorneys, but that was not their skill and their strong point. However, if Stephen were here tonight, he would tell you that he sent himself to prison. Yes, his attorneys made an unfixable error by not filing his private placement offerings on or before April 1st of 1974, because after that date, there was no savings clause, meaning that after April the 1st, there was no grace, no forgiveness, no fee or fine or backdating that would take care of the problem.